If your goal is sustainable produce like this, then here's a huge step you can take in the right direction. In this video, I'll go over how to efficiently start vermicomposting or worm composting and how to do it, what it is, and what the benefits are. Vermicomposting is a process in which you use worms to hasten the breakdown of compost materials. Worms feed on decomposing organic matter, just like the common fruit and vegetable scraps we create in the kitchen every single day. Certain types of worms can eat and break down almost their entire body weight every day if in the proper environment. That means a couple thousand tiny worms can produce a lot of castings at a pretty quick rate. Organic matter to be used in worm composting should be cut up or broken down a bit. It makes it much easier for the worms and microorganisms to ingest and hastens the process. Some people even recommend blending it up, but I find it works just fine doing some quick chopping. Coffee grounds are great for plants alone, but they will also offer the worms grit to help them digest faster and add a little caffeine boost. Eggshells are similar with digestive grit and are great for plants. Eggshells should at least be rinsed out as proteins can rot in your compost. After rinsed, they can be crushed up or sat in the sun or oven to make them brittle enough to just crumble apart. To start a worm bed or box, you need some bedding. I just use cardboard boxes that I have regularly come to my door from places like Amazon. Local newspapers or work papers that aren't heavily dyed or on glossy paper. Just make sure your boxes have all the taper adhesives parts pulled off. Shredding these up with a shredder makes the process extremely simple. I've purchased mine used for $15 and it works great. Depending on budget or how much you're interested, you could just tear it all up by hand or buy a larger shredder and really get going. I occasionally will shred some boxes or paper up and then just keep it in another box until they are needed. Worm castings are extremely beneficial, and here's why. Worms don't necessarily eat the organic matter, they more accurately process it. They take it in to eat the microorganisms that are eating the decomposing organic matter. In doing so, they actually break it down even faster and produce castings with even more microorganisms than before they had consumed it. These additional microorganisms are disease-free and exactly what your garden, small farm, or flowering plants crave. Worm castings also contain near 10 times the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that typical soil does. It essentially is a natural fertilizer that also conditions your soil with humic acids. You'd be hard-pressed to buy a better product to put in your plants or garden than worm castings, not to mention they won't burn your plants or kill beneficial worms already in your soils. First, we must note that the worms needed for this are called red worms or red wigglers. They are community-based worms that prefer to live very close to the surface near all the decomposing matter. I'd recommend starting with 1,000 or 2,000 worms so you can get up and running faster. Not the typical earthworm or nightcrawler most of us are familiar with. Nightcrawlers prefer deeper and more solitary living. They are also much better at soil aeration than breaking down organic matter. Red worms, under the right conditions, can breed very quickly, doubling their population rate every couple months. Mature worms can produce a few capsules, which are basically their eggs, every single week. The hatched worms will look like very small whitish threads that will mature in 1 to 2 months, and just a few months later are nearing their end already. This is a new worm bin starting fresh here. After shredding up your bedding material, you need a bin storage area, water, and worms. You can go with whatever scale you want, a bin or a giant cement foundation filled with worms, as long as the temperature range is safe and they won't see light as they are very sensitive to it. You'll also want to make sure that they aren't placed near a lot of traffic or lots of vibration, as they don't produce well there either. You need to make sure that whatever they're in can breathe well too, so drilling many holes in the bin lid will work well. When putting in the bedding and water, you want to just enough moisture so when you squeeze the bedding, some drops will fall out. You don't want too much more or less though, as both extremes are bad for the box and the worms. Once the bedding is set, you'll want to place the worms on top in a well-lit area. The light will make them travel down in the new bedding so they can adjust, as well as show you how healthy the worms you purchased or transplanted are. After about 10 minutes or so, you should come back to all the worms under the surface. You also want to leave the material the worms came with in the bin, as going to 100% new bedding can stress the worms unnecessarily. Gently putting some water on the worms will help them snap back if they have traveled, as many worms that are mail-ordered will arrive smaller due to water loss. You can put in a small amount of organic waste and bury it as well, but not too much, as they need a week or two to adjust to the new bed. They are also fine just eating the damp bedding, so food is not necessary right away. This is a bin I already have underway, and we keep it in the laundry room. If you do it right, there is no odor. The right moisture content, letting it breathe, and burying new organic matter is all there is to it. For extra measure, you can also cover the top of the compost with damp newspaper. After letting your worms work, you can see that they turn food waste and bedding to pure rich castings. This bin isn't complete yet, so I will likely amend some more bedding in organic matter soon. Keeping the depth of the worm box below 10 inches deep is ideal, as they prefer shallow depths. Once a box is complete, you can harvest the castings. To harvest, you're going to want to coax the worms to a certain area to reduce their overall density. Do this with food. Wait a couple weeks with no food and apply a nice handful on one side. Buried. Within a couple days, most of the worms will have traveled that way. Then you can use the straining method. Simply use some scrap wood to build a frame and put some 1/4-inch screen on it and strain the castings. Or if you're real adventurous, even a tennis racket will work. A couple handfuls at a time. Be creative. Whatever works. You're not going to catch them all, but most is good. A few worms in the garden never hurt, right? A couple thousand of these guys is just a few handfuls of worms. They really are amazing with how much they can achieve. What takes nature a year alone, these worms can do in less than half the time. The small investment pays for itself quickly, as castings are a high-quality fertilizer. If doing something good for the environment is something you enjoy, it makes it even better.